But at the very edge of Kumbari village, there stood a tree that no one dared to touch. It towered over all the others, its bark dark and gnarled, twisted as if it had spent centuries listening to secrets it could never tell. Even in the harshest dry season, when everything else turned to brown dust, its leaves remained a vibrant, defiant green. Its roots clawed their way out of the ground like massive fingers gripping the earth in a permanent embrace. The elders simply called it the Forbidden Tree. Their warning was always the same, passed down through generations. Do not climb it, do not cut it, and whatever you do, do not eat its fruit. The children, wide-eyed and curious, would always ask the same question, why? And the elder's reply was always a gentle but firm dismissal, because some questions are much safer left unanswered. But as we all know, questions have a way of growing, putting down roots of their own just like trees. Amina had known only Kumbari her entire life, and the constant pang of hunger had taught her a difficult lesson: to be brave. When the great drought arrived, turning their once fertile farms into wastelands of cracked earth and dust, Amina started noticing something strange. The forbidden tree, the one everyone avoided, was heavy with fruit. They were perfectly round, a brilliant golden color, and at night they seemed to pulse with a faint, otherworldly glow. One evening, the sound of her little brother's weak cries, a sound born of pure hunger, pushed Amina to make a choice. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and walked towards the tree. As she got closer, the air grew noticeably colder. The leaves above her began to whisper, even though the night was still and there was no wind to stir them. She took a deep breath and reached for one of the glowing fruits. Just as her fingers were about to touch it, a deep creak echoed from the trunk, and it split open like a mouth. A voice, ancient and deep, resonated from within the tree. "Why do you come here?" Amina froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. But she swallowed her fear, thinking of her family. "My family is hungry," she said, her voice trembling but clear. There was a long, heavy silence. The whispering leaves stopped. Then the tree spoke again. "This fruit gives what the heart desires most, but it always takes something in return." Amina's mind flashed with images of her brother's painfully thin arms, of her mother's exhausted, hollow eyes. The desire to end their suffering was overwhelming. "I accept," she said, her voice firm. At her words, a single fruit detached from its branch and fell gently into her waiting hands. It was warm and surprisingly heavy. That night, her family ate. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, their bellies were full. They slept soundly, free from the gnawing ache of starvation. The next morning, the entire village awoke to a miracle. The wells were overflowing with fresh water. The fields were lush and green as if the drought had never happened, and the sound of children laughing once again filled the air. But as Amina watched the joyous scene, a cold dread began to creep into her heart. She tried to picture her father, who had passed years ago, and found she couldn't. His face was a complete blank. Panic seized her. The terrible truth crashed down on her like a physical blow. The tree had taken her most treasured memories of him. It had taken the very thing her heart held most dear. Tears streamed down her face as she ran back to the forbidden tree, falling to her knees at its massive roots. "You gave us life," she cried out, her voice breaking, "but you took my past from me." The tree's voice was softer this time, almost gentle. "Every gift has a cost. This is the balance of things. Remember this and teach it to others." From that day forward, Combari prospered. The fields remained green, and the people never knew hunger again. But no one ever touched the forbidden tree. Amina, in time, became one of the village elders. She would gather the children under the shade of a different, kinder tree and tell them the story. She didn't just tell them that the tree was forbidden, she told them why. Because some gifts are far too expensive, and sometimes a little hunger is a kinder fate than forgetting who you are and where you come from. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing for more tales from around the world.